And this is Zach Pello at Pello Fitness, and we're going to be talking about how you can adjust your nutrition throughout your life so that way you can continue to get results and keep those results no matter what the situation is. And so today we've got a fan. Her name is Alexa Fan. Oh, she
Nice.
runs Alexa Fan Wellness. But yeah, so we have, yeah, sorry, a guest speaker. Oh my gosh.
I'm also a fan. I'm
Yes,
also
you
a
are a fan. Oh my gosh, what am I thinking here? It's funny.
fan.
Anyways, she is a coach as well, and I'm going to let her go ahead and introduce herself.
Yes, thank you, Zach, and thank
Yeah.
you so much for having me here today. I'm so excited. As Zach mentioned, my name is Alexa Fan, and I ironically get that joke a lot. Like, I'm a fan of whatever I'm doing, so you're not the only one that's done that. But yes, as Zach mentioned, I'm also a coach. I'm a personal trainer, a nutrition coach, and I just love helping people towards achieving lasting results in their life. I really specifically focus on behavior change, habit change, and then the fitness component of making those things happen. So typical kind of client for me would be someone who is just sick of starting over from the same thing, whether it's new fad diets, new fitness programs, working with different coaches, and just never seem to get that lasting result. Those are the people that I love to work with and really help to show them a new way of wellness through different dimensions of wellness. And how it's all encompassing, and how when we focus on those things, that can really help us to achieve lasting results. So that is a little bit about me. I live in New Jersey. I am kind of loving this introverted lifestyle right now as an extrovert, which is interesting in this time of
Yeah.
quarantine, but it's a good balance. It's a good time to reflect and kind of look at the areas where I can improve. And so that's why I just love connecting with people all over the world in this time and figuring out ways that I can better serve people as a coach. So first question I kind of have to throw at you, Zach, is talking about this concept of insanity, which the definition is that we do the same thing over and over again and we're expecting a different result. So how do you see that in working with clients? How do you see that in your own life? And what would you say to someone who keeps using the same approach over and over again in different times and seasons of their life?
Yeah, I think I see this a lot with clients and non-clients where they will be, so stuck on what worked in the past for them. So, whether it's tracking calories or doing Weight Watchers or doing keto, fasting, any of that stuff, they keep going back to it because it worked for them in the past. And for some reason, they can't quite understand why it's not working for them now. And you'll see this, they just can't quite stick to it. They just
Mhm.
can't quite do as well with it as they did before.
Yeah.
And I will encourage someone, I'll say, why don't we try something different? Let's try this. And it's like, well, I'm going to try to give it another week. I think I just need to get more disciplined. I need to get more disciplined. I'm just going to do it a little bit harder and I'm just going to make sure it happens. And
Mm.
so the next week goes by and they've tracked 4 of 7 days. Okay, pretty good. Let's try to get 5 of 7 days next week, improve that a little bit more. The next week they get 2 of 7 days and they're like, no, I can do this. I can do it. And before you know it, they completely just fall off. Right. And, the problem with that is like, again, the definition of insanity. It's like, sure, it worked at one time, but if you keep doing it and it's not working anymore, it's probably better just to switch something up, figure it out. What about you with your clients? Do you experience this as well sometimes?
Yeah, and it's so funny because I have like a client right now that's coming to mind. It's like over and over again, we're trying to make this tracking thing happen. I have to text
Yeah.
him like every day and be like, "Hey, did you track? Did you track?" And we've had the conversation of, "Hey, why don't we try something else?" And he's like, "No, no, I'm just lazy. Like I just have to do it." And so as a coach, it's a challenge of knowing when to really draw the line and say, "Hey, this isn't working." Or let them kind of fail on their own and figure out that it's not going to work for them, or maybe it is going to work. So actually struggling with that a little bit right now as to how much time do I let go by before
Mm.
really saying, hey, we got to change our method because it's not working. So actually on our last call Friday, I said, hey, I'm going to give you another week when we have our next check-in. If this isn't working, we're going to switch your method, because it's been like 2 months where it's been up again, down again. And I understand change takes time. I mean, 100%. I once had someone work on drinking water for 8 weeks straight because she just couldn't get it down, and that's okay. It just takes different amount of time for different people. But yeah, that's kind of where what I first thought of when I asked you that question, and when you reflected it back to me, is there's a hard line as a coach of when to let the time pass and essentially let people try on their own versus really drawing that line and saying, hey, this might be a better option if we try X, Y, or Z.
No, that's great. I think I run the same problem. I mean, and if you guys are watching this today and you've kind of done this yourself, where you just keep trying to push the same thing, go and give us a heart below. We'd appreciate that. Let us know. And what diet or what method was the issue? You know,
Mm,
what method were you stuck on? Go and type that below, hashtag whatever you were doing. But you know, it really is hard as a coach to know when to tell someone, you know what, we need to switch,
mhm.
because you want to be as client centered as possible as a coach. But there are times, that's why people hire us as a coach, to tell them sometimes what they have to do, because they're not going to get, sometimes they can't get out of their own way. And
Mm,
I think that makes it challenging for them to get results. And you know, this happens, yeah, I think with everybody. So if we can focus on knowing that it's okay to try different methods, I think that is so important. And kind of going into what are the different methods, I think that's what a lot of people struggle with. And in one of my courses, they taught lane swimming and ocean swimming. And this is an analogy, okay? So if you think, if you're in a lane on a pool, you're very restricted, you're gonna go perfectly straight, you're in control. If you get into just an open pool, it's a little bit harder, it's a little more open. You get into a lake, even harder, and you get into an ocean, someone might drown,
mm,
right? So the idea is methods of, you know, losing weight or adjusting your food intake can fall somewhere in that range.
yeah.
And so we've got
Okay.
macros in lane swimming, and then you've got intuitive eating closer to over here, maybe,
Yeah.
or just ad libitum eating, just eating kind of wherever you want is in the ocean
Mhm.
without paying attention. And so finding the spot that you're going to be, that you fit in right now in your life, is what's most important. So I'm going to give you a few more examples. Macro tracking, calories and protein tracking, hand portion tracking, meal templates, and Weight Watchers would be somewhere over here, like with the hand portion tracking, maybe. You got meal templates, then you've got eating 5 palms of protein per day, or drinking so many ounces of water per day. And then you've got, you know, then it's like eating slower, eating to 80% full, something like that. And people could say like some of them are in different spots, of course, but it just get that in your mind when you're thinking about which approach you should take. And what do you think about that? Does that make sense? Do you think like that's something that, you know, people should look at? Do you think people should look at their dietary methods like this? Would this be helpful, do you think?
I really think so. And like the first time you even shared that concept with me, I was just so I guess amazed that it could be put so simply, because when you think about dieting, or you think about trying to achieve weight loss, or you think about just trying to reach any goal, you think that there's like one strict method that has to be done, and if you veer from that method, like you're not going to get there. And I think that continuum, and the kind of like the way I see it is like a bar, and then there's like you said, extreme one on this side, intuitive eating, and like extreme two being macro tracking or calorie tracking over here. And I think for people to see and know that there's all these different methods in between that could be options for them is really empowering, to know
Yeah.
that they have a choice. And some people don't want choices. I think it depends on their personality, like what they do best with. But just to know that there's multiple ways to get to the same result can be really freeing from feeling like you need to do this a certain way, and if you don't work out 10 times blah blah blah, you know, there's so much like there's no fluidity in that kind of thought process. But in the thought process of, on this spectrum, where do I fall, or what would I like to try, like what would actually work for my lifestyle, I think that is so freeing for people. I love that thought.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and it also, if we look at it, you know, you've got this really um, is lane swimming is very accurate and can get you great and even get you good results. But this is like if you do it right, weigh your food and everything, you're probably going to get results.
Mhm.
If you go over here, you don't have to do as much of that, but you might be less likely to get results.
Mhm.
But it's less effort in a lot of ways. So it's not only just like, how much control you have, it's also how much effort it takes. So
Yeah.
depending on your life situation, I think that's important to remember is, how often has something come up in your life where you're doing something really good, you've picked up new habits, this stressful event, you lose your job, or you have to switch jobs, or you have a kid, all of
Mm.
a sudden, the last two or three habits you picked up are gone.
Yeah.
And that's where I think where people, fall is they don't know how to adjust.
Mm.
So if they're doing macros before and
Mhm.
something becomes really stressful in their life, they could just go to calorie tracking,
Mhm.
or they could just say, you know what, I'm just going to try to get a protein and a vegetable at lunch and dinner. Or they could just say, I'm just going to eat till I'm just satisfied and I'm not going to eat with TV on in front of me at all. I'm going to make sure I'm, focused on my meal and nothing else.
Mhm.
So learning how to adjust that, I think, is going to be the key. Would you agree on that?
Yeah, I mean, I love what you said just about like that concept of a life event happening. Like there's so much change that happens in our lives and like unexpected change. This whole quarantine, for example, this whole COVID, this is such like no one expected this. And it's like, how are you going to learn to adjust? And also being patient, I feel like with yourself is a really important thing to talk about. Like you don't have to be perfect. There's many ways to achieve the same result. And it has to be, I think being honest with yourself is really crucial too, to say, hey, what's actually going to work in this season of my life? Like what actually makes sense? What's not going to add so much stress where it feels like a burden for me? And what's going to like coincide with where I am right now? And like you said, having a child, that's like a huge life event that changes things drastically. And instead of being like, oh, you're coming up short every time with tracking your calories, or you're coming up short with getting your 8 hours of sleep or whatever it is. It's like, hey, what's my minimum? Like, what can a minimum be for myself in this season of my life so that I, don't have to put this pressure on myself to be perfect or be what I was when I didn't have a kid. So I love that thought process of like changing your method based on where you're at in your life and your events.
Yeah, and I like what you said about finding a minimum. That's huge. I think with any goal we set, it's a good idea to have that minimum
Mm.
set. And what I mean by that is, say if you are tracking calories and your goal is 1500, well, maybe you should have one of those fallback numbers. What if something crazy happens and you're at a party and it wasn't expected? You could say 2000 calories is my fallback number. you know Exercise, you could be, instead of 5 days a week, you could say, well, as long as I can get three in, I'm not going to beat myself up, but my goal's five.
I love that.
To those
Yeah.
lines, right?
Yes.
So yeah, I think I like the minimums. That's really important. Now, the other thought I wanted to talk about was, in terms of going on a diet versus adjusting your diet. I think this is really important. You can adjust your food intake without like going on a diet. I think that's a confusion a lot of times. And sometimes people use the word dieting for fat loss phase, like a phase of fat loss. So it's semantics sometimes. It can be a little confusing,
Yeah.
but you don't have to go on keto. You don't have to go. So, in my opinion, most of what we're talking about are different ways of measurement or applying changes to your diet. So, you know, tracking your calories is not a diet, that's a tool of measurement. Um, Eating 5 servings of fruits and vegetables per day, that's not a diet, that's an adjustment of your nutrition.
Yeah. That's such a
And
good point. Such a good point.
right. And I mean, people think tracking calories is a diet. It's like, no, it's not.
Mm-mm. Yeah.
It's just measuring your food. That's all
Yeah.
it is.
It's like an accountability tool. And I think sometimes people, when they start tracking, they recognize the garbage that they're putting into their bodies. And then it becomes more of a diet for them because they're like, oh my gosh, I just ate, 10 whatever cookies and I didn't even realize it. And then they probably start implementing these measures of making things a little bit healthier. And then maybe they consider it a diet. But I love what you said. It's not necessarily a diet, it's just adjusting how you're eating.
Yeah. I think that's something I just thought about, last few months.
Mhm.
I was like, this is a tool that you can use. Um, Hand portions are a tool. Weight Watchers can be a tool. It doesn't have to be like, you don't even have to be doing it to lose weight. You could be doing Weight Watch counting points just to count points,
That's so true.
just to
Yeah.
manage your body weight, right?
Yeah.
So that's pretty interesting, a different way to look at it. Now, what would you say for you? What are your top three different methods that you would use for dietary control?
Mm. I definitely, for beginners, I think it depends where people are in their like stage of change or where they are mentally. Like for someone who is like demonstrating maybe a little bit of control or like obsessive compulsive kind of behaviors, I wouldn't necessarily tell them to track or like weigh
Mhm.
themselves super often because I just think that mentally that can be a real barrier for them. So for someone like that, I might just have them like do a plate method where they're looking at, the plate. It should be half filled with vegetables, non-starchy vegetables, and then have your protein and your like cup of carbs and your fat, and just have them send me pictures of that. That's a method that I like to use sometimes. So it kind of takes the tracking or takes like it kind of makes it fun. Like I have some clients who like really enjoy putting that beautiful salad together and like enjoy sending me that picture. So I'll do that sometimes. Another thing I'll do is habit tracking. That's like the biggest thing, and behavior tracking. And I've just recently been thinking about this a little bit more, Zach. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Is like I'm tracking behaviors with people so that they can become habits. So, for example, like let's say someone is in a consistent habit of drinking a beer with dinner every night, and they want to try to work on that behavior. So the behavior would actually be switching the beer for water. And then eventually, as we work on that and they're consistent with that behavior, it eventually will become a habit where they don't have to think about it. So, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. The thing is like I don't use traditional habits as often. I
Mhm.
use more tracking, different methods of tracking to get, the result.
Yeah.
But I am a firm believer in every action we do uses up your discipline. If we can imagine discipline being in a gas tank or motivation in a gas tank, every new habit that you're taking on, and that includes tracking, that's using up your discipline and motivation more so than something you've been doing for 5, 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've been doing something 5 or 10 years, you're only reducing each day your motivation a small fraction of a percentage.
Mm-hmm.
But you throw in something new, and initially it's going to take up every day 5% of your tank. And you're always refilling your tank slowly. So
Yeah.
the goal is balancing new habits and still allowing it to refill. So you add a new habit that's easy enough that they can do
Mhm.
consistently. And then eventually it actually uses up less of their motivation because it's become a habit.
Yes. I love that. I never
So,
heard that concept explained that way before, with the discipline kind of being like a barometer or something that you have an allotted amount of. And then as you're tracking or as you're going throughout your day, where maybe it's even like you're putting out energy in your job or whatever it is, like slowly that discipline
yeah.
motivation is going to fall. I love that. That's very visual. I really like that.
No, yeah, and you're exactly right. It's even in the same day. So later in the day, you should have less motivation or
Yeah.
discipline. They've shown that, I think, that first thing in the day, most people, that's when they're most able to make choices.
Mm.
And by the end of the day, I mean, let's be honest, when do people struggle with snacking or, anything like that? It's always at the end of the day.
So true. Yes.
They've made all these decisions all day long, and they've said no. You've said no all day long to maybe food that you want to eat, or and no, that's pretty interesting though for sure. But I really think the discipline gas tank idea. I mean, I've heard that before, and I've just really used it. And it's just that you're right though. If they can develop it into a habit, it doesn't require that much work anymore.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I'm seeing this as like a really good Instagram post that we can make like a
Oh
graphic
yeah,
for and just like deplete it. And that even I'm thinking of, even people that ask you the question of like, when should I work out? Like, is there an optimal time to work out? I'm like, what's optimal is what's going to work for your schedule and where you're going to be consistent.
yeah,
So I think for me personally, the morning is the best time because nothing else has your attention yet. Whereas like throughout the day, it's like, oh, this could come up and then this person could call and then, I have to cook dinner and I have all these reasons or excuses that I would make to say, oh no, I'm not going to work out. Whereas the morning, it's like, I have one goal. I'm just going to get it
yeah.
done 30, 45 minutes. And then I don't have to think about it the rest of the day.
No, yeah, totally, absolutely. Figure out when things work best for you. You're going to stick to them more and find that
Mhm.
trigger, that time, that whatever triggers it, you're going to do it after this or something like that. It's going to be really helpful.
Yeah.
Now, what do you think about with people? I'm sure you've experienced this with clients or people that have come to you. They had this great experience one time. They lost a lot of weight,
Hmm.
but for some reason, they just like, and this is my theory on this, they've ran their motivation tank so dry and their discipline so dry that they never can get it refilled again. And it's almost like I always say, people always have one good weight loss effort in them.
Mm,
It's like
yeah.
everybody's lost that 40 pound, not everybody, but I hear it so often. They'll be like, yeah, I lost that one time. I lost 50 pounds and I
Mhm.
just can't do it again. And I swear, it's like they never get off the wheel. It's like they keep trying to jump back on and it's almost like they haven't been able to refill.
Mm.
And I noticed this with a lot of people. And so if you guys are listening, let us know below. If you guys have kind of experienced this, it's almost like you bottom out and then you spend years trying to regain motivation. And for some reason, everything you try, you just fall back off on. Have you seen any people come to you that are kind of like that, where it's almost like, wow, they are really don't have much motivation?
Yeah, they're exhausted. It takes so much effort to kind of talk yourself into starting that process over. And especially for people that have seen big weight loss results in the past, I think that's almost harder and than someone who's just starting fresh. So I've definitely had clients where they've lost a lot of weight before. They're coming to me almost in like desperation of like, I don't know what to do. Like I've been trying the same way and it hasn't been working. And this is that education component of our jobs, I think, where we are in a position to say, hey, you did this last time, but let's try this time. And here's why we're going to try it this way instead of that way. Because sometimes maybe, when this is something I've seen too, maybe the method that they used was an extreme method that they weren't able to sustain with their lifestyle or with the calorie intake. Like eating 500 calories a day is not sustainable over the course of your life, nor is it healthy. So again, I think education is such an empowering tool that we can use with clients and that we can say, hey, it's not your fault. Like I think that's something I find myself saying to people a lot is it's truly not your fault. Like you just didn't
Right.
know, and here's the knowledge component that you're missing. Now let's get to work and do it the right way, in the healthy way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're exactly right. It's not their fault. There's nothing wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with you guys.
Yeah,
You guys are
nothing.
struggling. There's
You're
nothing
perfect.
wrong. Our bodies are built to avoid weight loss.
Mm,
Everything in our body is telling us to gain weight. It does
mm,
not want us to lose weight,
yeah.
and it's not your fault. I think that's just so important. And one thing I see it's a big issue for people is when they're in that situation, when their motivation is just tanked
Mm,
and they've been like that for a few years, you really need to learn to buy into the idea of, any small improvement counts.
yes.
And I think a lot of times people don't buy into that. So then they don't fully embrace the idea of like a habit based approach.
Hmm.
Like you have to embody that almost. You have to be like, you know what? This is who I am. I'm going to be somebody who just focuses on building habits.
Yes.
And if you don't make that your identity because you just don't believe it's going to work or whatever it is, then it probably won't because you won't make the habit change. You won't do
Mm.
it.
I love that. That is so, so good. And that whole concept of embodying, it's like who maybe I'm not this person today, but who do I want to become in this process? And that doesn't mean that it's like you have to become that person tomorrow. It doesn't mean next month. It could be, I always tell my clients to think of it as a year process to start. Like, hey, if you gave this your 100% effort for a year, what do you think would change in that year? And I mean, lasting transformation takes time, to be honest, because we have to
Mhm.
unlearn so many habits, so many thought processes, and it really takes time, mental effort, physical effort, emotional effort. You're working through years of behaviors that maybe you have from childhood with food, or, there's just so much. So I always encourage my clients to think of it in a year-long process, and that really helps them. I think they really see the big picture as opposed to just like, oh, I have to be this way before summer comes, or
Yeah.
I have to look good for this wedding, or whatever the case is. That was a little bit of a tangent. I forget why I
No.
started on
Yeah.
that, but yeah, that really helps a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a long process, and you have to learn, like we said earlier, this is what this whole video is about, is make sure you're adjusting your goals to fit your current situation. When I say goals, I mean like your daily habits that you're working on, or you're going to track your calories, whatever it is. Adjust your goals to fit your current level of stress
Yeah.
in your environment. So if your stress is high, you might have to use a dimmer and make a little bit of adjustment on the difficulty of what method you're using.
Mm,
uh, so yeah, I think that's probably a good takeaway from this for people, that it, remember that there's never too little. It's 1% is still going to be get you light years ahead. Small changes, right?
yes, yes. I love that. And that was, I don't know much about like your backstory, Zach, and maybe we could save that for another day or something. But I know for me, like I struggled so much with weight loss and with weight gain, and it was like this perpetual cycle that just kept happening. So like when you asked me, that person that came to you and has lost weight in the past, like that was me.
Oh,
And
really?
I didn't like, at one point in college, I think I was like 35 pounds heavier than I am right now. And it took me years to learn that it was my habits and behaviors versus the method that I was using.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
once that shifted in my mind, like everything changed. I had like less pressure on myself. The guilt wasn't there because I wasn't trying to meet this expectation and falling short every time. And then I was able to focus on, okay, what's one thing I can do? Like you said, how can I get 1% better today? And that is why I think I'm so passionate about it, is because I've seen it work and I've seen it change my own lifestyle and my clients that I work with. So I love that you just kind of reaffirm that we don't have to be so harsh on ourselves all the time, and
Yeah.
it is the habits and the behaviors that lead to that healthy lifestyle that we all aspire to live.
No, that's so cool. That's a great story. I love that you've had to experience that. I mean, of course, I think everybody has gone through stuff, but it's very, very specific towards what we're talking about. That's really cool. And I
Yeah.
just think that, I've also heard people say that they're just not a disciplined person. They're like, I'm just not as disciplined as so and so. My answer to that is that they're just, what a lot of times I'll say is, no, it's not that they're more disciplined. It's just that they're better at picking habits that fit within their discipline.
Mm.
And usually, if you're not feeling disciplined, it's because you're trying to pick habits that are above your discipline level. And so I think that if people can get, like, just, they have to match those two things,
Mm.
their habits with their level of discipline, if they want to take steps forward. Because if not, if they try to overreach, they're just going to come crashing down every time.
Yes. And Zach, do you think that someone's level of discipline can rise over time?
I think it can. I think there is a muscle, like some sort of muscle of practicing. But really, I think it doesn't really matter too much, because I think discipline, even if it was static,
Mhm.
everything you do, the longer you do it, the less discipline it takes.
Mm.
So it creates room. So it's like you're
Yeah.
able to fit more and more into that. I mean, eventually you run out of time in the day, but
Yeah.
things like that. So I think it's limited,
Mhm.
but you can create space in that.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Like you said earlier, the longer you've been practicing that habit, the more it's become kind of just a natural part of you. The more you embody it, that's how you can create that more space for new habits or new behaviors.
Exactly, yeah. And when you do something like macro tracking or something like that, I do it a lot with people, trust me. I
Mhm.
do. but it takes up a lot of discipline. It's
Yeah.
not a long-term habit. It's a
Mhm.
short-term habit. So long-term habits are the smaller the habit, the more long-term likely it's going to be a long-term habit.
Mm.
All right. The
Yeah.
bigger the habit, the more likely it's going to be a shorter term habit.
Mhm.
So it's about the key is there's nothing wrong with either of those.
Mhm.
The key is understanding that and knowing the purpose of that.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, you can read your own discipline level, your motivation. You can read that. You're paying attention. Like if you're struggling, you need to take it back a notch. Usually, you
Mhm.
can't just push through it. It doesn't usually work.
Yeah, I just had a person come to mind when I was working at my last job, nutrition coaching and personal training, and we would do consults with people, to see where they're at, see how we can help them. And this woman was like a very successful life coach for executives, and she like would run on like 4 hours of sleep and would always be at everybody's beck and call because it was a very large company. So she was always like on coaching calls with people, giving so much of herself. And in her past, she would do high intensity exercises before this job. She would do 4 or 5 days a week of like 2 hour workouts. Sometimes she would do like hit, and then she would like do like run for like 45 minutes or so at a very high pace. And so I'm just thinking of like when I met her, she was gaining weight and she couldn't figure out why. She was barely getting any sleep. She was continuing to try to do these high intensity workouts. She was stressed with her job, and all of these things were just contributing to her stress levels being like through the roof. And so I tried to, educate her a little bit on the fact that she needed to either change her work position or change how she was working, or change her workout so that she could have a little bit more stress management and relief in her life. And she wasn't willing to change anything. And I saw her for months and months in the gym, and she unfortunately just kept gaining weight because of her stress.
Yeah.
And I just think of her as a perfect example. Like if she just changed her methodology and her
Yeah.
approach a little bit, she really could have seen the results that she wanted, but she just wasn't at the point to make a change. And sometimes that's okay. Like sometimes people just aren't ready to make a change. But I think also recognizing that in themselves to say, hey, it's not my time right now. It's not going to be beneficial for me. I'll do it when I'm ready. Then that can also help to relieve that fall, like coming up short too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's never a wrong time to say, you know what, I'm just going to focus on maintaining
Yeah.
and just trying to focus on just being healthy and happy. I think a lot of times people feel guilty if they're not trying to lose weight, or it's so powerful just to be like, take a pause. Let
Mm.
me just regain control, and then I can move forward, right? So,
Yeah, yeah, that's huge. That is so huge. Because
uh,
sometimes you think that if you stop trying to achieve something that you failed or you quit, but you're just taking a pause. And sometimes
yeah,
that's more beneficial than actually trying to continue going at the same rate and not seeing the results that you want.
right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, it's been really good talking to you today. We got, I'm just going to double check in the comments here. Let's
Sure.
see. Shelly said that she had used Weight Watchers successfully in the past, and it's not working anymore. And that's exactly kind of going back to what we said. It's probably just likely that a different method is in order, something a little
Mm.
bit, maybe a little bit easier to adhere to, even though maybe Weight Watchers was easy to adhere to before.
Yeah.
It may just not be now. The question is it adherence is a problem, or are you adhering and you're not getting results?
Mm.
She's not on here anymore, so, but that's something that, maybe she can ask. She said she's going to watch the rest of the
Okay.
video later.
Yeah. Something that,
Matt,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Matt said he started intermittent fasting in January, down 30 pounds. That's awesome, dude.
Wow.
Good
Congrats.
job, man.
So,
Kicking butt. And yeah, it is. Intermittent fasting is pretty simple, and
mm,
that's a big part of this, right? Is finding
yeah.
simple methods, right?
Yes.
And yeah, Shelley liked the idea of finding a minimum. Again, that was huge.
Yeah.
She asked what was the best way to establish a new habit, but I think we kind of covered that. Just making sure we pick one that you can stick to,
Yes.
and finding, something that speaks to you, right? Wouldn't you say, like, something that speaks to you? What do you want to improve?
Hmm. Yeah, that's important too.
Yeah, and that can be anything. It could be sleep, it could be water, it could be protein, it could be snacks, whatever you want it to be.
Hmm.
So, no, this is a great episode here today, guys. I really appreciate everybody hopping on here, and thank you, Alexa. This was awesome. I loved
Yeah.
having you on.
Yeah, this is great. We'll have to do this again because I think like a lot of what we both are passionate about or what we enjoy coaching on like really coincides. So I'm excited to share this with people that, that follow me and can hopefully benefit from the things that you shared today too.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. If you guys want to learn a little bit more about Alexa, go ahead and follow her. Check out her stuff. She's got some great stuff. She does some small group training and things like that online right now, so that could be something really helpful for you guys. If you have any other questions, feel free to DM any of us or either of us. We'd love to help you out. So yeah, you guys have a wonderful day, guys. And again, I really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on here. And yeah, we're gonna get out. Thanks, guys.